What we're going to be doing today is upgrading a 2005 Polaris Sportsman 500 with some new front tires. The tires that were on this bike were not stock. They were the same stock tire but of a different size. They were the Polaris PXTs, which are essentially the Carlisle ACT tires. But they were an inch taller. They were 26 by 8 by 12s. And we're going to be upgrading them with some Maxxis Bighorn 26 by 9 by 12s, so they are an inch wider. The main reason for this upgrade is we blew out a front tire hitting a rock. The Polaris PXTs are only a 3-ply tire. The Bighorn 2s are rated as a 6-ply tire. So really at just about the same cost, we thought we'd go with a bigger and better tire. Now it does pose one issue. Because those Maxxis are an inch wider, we got a problem with it hitting our tie rod end. So we're going to have to look at putting some wheel spacers on, and we'll be taking a look at those today and showing you how to put those on. One thing to note is even though these tires are the same height, you can just tell maybe from the video it's considerable difference in height. Those Bighorns are at least an inch taller than the PXTs are, and also over an inch wider. When you take a look at the side profile on the PXTs, they're really a vertical tire. There's very little sidewall that goes out beyond the rim. If you take a look at a Bighorn, it's actually considerable. So not only are we going taller, we will also be considerably wider. Checking the weight on these, it doesn't look like there's really that much difference. Just picking them up, they feel like they're really close in weight. One of the things I wanted to point out with the Polaris PXT tires, you can take a look. Again, these are an inch taller, but they're essentially the same width as a stock tire. You can see basically how much space you have between the tie rod end and the wheel itself. There's enough where you can essentially put the width of your finger between there, and that's your clearance. And what I'll do is I'll take these off, I'll put the Bighorns on, and we'll see the difference. Okay, so now here we are with the Maxxis Bighorn 2.0s, and you can see, kind of hard here, but there's essentially no clearance. That tire is rubbing right up against that tie rod end, so that's going to force us to put some wheel spacers on here, which is really the next thing I want to kind of point out. If you take a look at the steel rims that you get with your Polaris, there is very little threads beyond the stock lug nut. So if you do have a steel rim, the studs that you get are very short. They're actually not going to work with the wheel spacers. I'll show putting the wheel spacer on. You'll get an idea on what I'm talking about, but you're really going to need to change out those wheel studs if you're going to do this. Okay, so here are wheel spacers. We got them off of eBay. They're from a company called Precision Moto Works. So take a look at these. One of the things I actually liked about these spacers compared to some of the other ones out there is they actually have this ridge that the rim would sit on. A lot of them are just, they're just a machine flat, so there's no ridge here for the rim. I kind of like that idea. One thing I did notice on the back side, when they had these in the pictures on the web, this back groove was only about half as wide as it is here in the actual product. And what they told me they discovered was that the wheel spacers that they had would not fit on a Sportsman or a Razor, again due to the hubs having this extra wide piece here compared to the other models. So they actually didn't list these as being supported on a Sportsman or a Razor, but they said now that they've remachined these that they now supported. The problem is the guy who did the CNC or whoever did that messed up. And here's basically what they did. This inside groove needs to be the exact same diameter as this outside groove, and it's not. So when you put these spacers on your bike, there's play. They actually move around. And my measurement comes up with about 50 thousandths of an inch. Now, the other problem that these wheel spacers have compared to the competitors are that the holes that you actually mount from your hub, the lugs, are not tapered. They're flat. So they give you some lug nuts like these, which are again just a flat nut. They do have the little ridges in the back to help bite into the material. But the problem that causes, since it's not going to be perfectly aligned using the groove, and you also have a flat lug nut, how are you going to center these? How are you going to make sure these are perfectly centered? There really isn't a way. You're always going to be off. I mean, you might try to shim this backside. I've thought of doing that, but I'm a little concerned, you know, as you hit bumps, are these going to loosen up and move around on you? I contacted their support. You know, they were happy that I pointed out the problem. They'll probably update future versions, but for these versions right now, I honestly can't recommend them for a Sportsman. Again, if you just put two of them together, you know, you can start to see the amount of space, you know, that are created between them just moving them back and forth. So, you know, I think basically they just messed up when they tried to machine those deeper. They also went wider. But we'll go ahead and go forward and just show you the next piece of this, and we'll see how these mount up. Okay, so here's what they're going to look like once they are mounted. It might be a little hard to see in the video, but yeah, I'll get in close here. That's as far as that lug nut will go on the stud. So it's only about 3 turns, which is definitely not a safe condition. So these stock studs on this bike, if you got the steel rims, are not going to work. If you got aluminum rims, they're a little bit longer and they should work. So what I was able to do is go to my dealership and pick up a bag of longer studs. A couple dollars a piece. I think I spent about $30 altogether. We'll be installing those next. They're about 1/4 of an inch longer than the wheel stud that's in there now, so that should give us just enough, and also keep this lug nut recessed inside the hole here, so we shouldn't have any clearance problems with the rim. Okay, so I was able to get the studs out using this punch here and a hammer. Just put it right here in the center. Kind of be careful, you don't want to mess up the threads in case you ever need to use these again. But once you take these out, and you can compare them to the size of the new ones that I purchased from my dealer, and you can see they're about 1/4 inch longer, so that should be just enough to get the threads on there, yet keep them below the holes on those wheel spacers. Now, unfortunately, to install the new lug nut studs here, I'm not going to be able to just fit them behind the wheel here and pull them through. They're just long enough where it looks like I'm going to have to take off this caliper. There's a couple 4 bolts behind there to take off. I think that'll give me enough play to be able to slide these in there without having to take the whole hub off. Okay, so I was able to just loosen up this brake rotor here just enough where I can squeeze these bolts through here. And once I've done that, I use a washer, okay, because I want something to protect the face of this hub. And then I'm going to put on my lug nut and tighten that up. Probably 30-40 pounds should be enough to do that. But first what I want to do is I want to come up and I want to set the brake. And this will make it easier to hold that from turning. Okay, and now that you've got your studs mounted in there and tightened down, make sure you tighten up that rotor. You want to go through and make sure that's nice and snug. And then when you put your wheel spacer on, you'll see those studs a little bit longer. I think they're going to be just what we need. Go ahead and put a bolt on here and get an idea how far this thing will go on. Alright, you can see we're already past the thread, so that'll be safe. Also, that nut is still inside the spacer. So these should be exactly what we needed. Looks like the exact right length. Now my dealer had a problem locating the right size of wheel stud for me. Basically, what he had to do, they didn't have anything showing up under 2005, so I think he looked up like a 2008 Razor to find out what they put in for the stock aluminum wheels versus the steel rims. So if you do that, again, they were only maybe 1/4 inch longer. You know, look for that, and I think you should be okay. Now we'll get the wheel on and see how it looks. Okay, so there she is. We've got the Bighorn 2.0s on a 2005 Polaris Sportsman 500. So let's take a look and see what kind of clearance we got now with these tires on here mounted. Before we had about the width of a finger, so you know, we've got at least twice that now. So we've got quite a bit of room behind there. Wheel spacers look good. You know, they kind of look factory, so you really don't notice them. The only downside, as I mentioned before, was the machining on the wheel spacers with that inside groove. I really wish they would have got that right, but unfortunately I'll probably be returning these, going for a different model or waiting for them to update these. One last thing I want to point out is when you get the wheel spacers, whether from this company or any other company, the lug nuts that they provide you, take care into where you install those. These lug nuts, even though they're gonna have them on these wheel studs, they don't go on these studs. They typically will go on your wheel stud. They're it's coming through your hub, and that's designed because these lug nuts are designed to go in these holes, even though they've installed them here. Typically, the studs that came with your rims are meant to go on these studs. So keep them in the right location, especially if you get a set of these with the tapered holes. It's very important that you use the right ones in the right location. Other than that, again, that's how she looks. If you got any questions, let me know. It's a pretty easy install. Thanks.